everyone. Welcome to the Felicity, Optimist versus Cynic podcast with us, your hosts, Melissa and Fish. This is a Felicity rewatch podcast. We'll watch an episode each week and join you here to talk about it. But today we're just getting to know each other. We're doing a welcome podcast to tell you a little bit about ourselves and hopefully learn a little about you if you write back to us. So I am Melissa. I'm a small business marketer by day and a TV and movie watcher by night. And I'm joined here by my fabulous co-host, Fish. Fish, tell us about yourself.
Well, first of all, my name is Fish, and I work mostly for nonprofits, both in the US and abroad. And for me, TV has always been that sort of nice piece of home. You know, when you're out and you're traveling, mainly went to developing countries. So, you know, as long as they had power, remember the days when laptops actually had CD-ROM drives. I would bring along a little packet of DVDs. I didn't have many of them, but I could watch Friends or Arrested Development or Alias. And it just sort of, you know, at night gives you a little time to decompress and get back to normal. Like, you know, a bunch of friends who, some of them don't have jobs, with giant apartments in New York City as you're sitting in a place that has no running water.
Yeah, well, and for those who are wondering, like, hey, is she, speaking of alias, is she using an alias just for this podcast? The answer is no. I've been calling you Fish for years now, for no reason, really.
Well, it's because it's my name.
Well, it is your name now. I accept nothing else. And I was actually really excited when I was like, hey, what do you want to be called on the podcast? And you agreed to it being Fish. And I thought, we can make this a worldwide sensation. I'm ready for it. I want this thing to be a real thing, you know, that more people than just me call you that. So here we are. Yeah, and it's kind of cool, your journey with TV. I also, so I said that I do small business marketing. I have had my own business for years now, and I live and work alone. And actually, I'm really introverted. So my whole life, I've had a lot of alone time. And I often find, you know, when I'm doing work or when I'm doing tasks that don't take all of my brain, like if I'm doing something that's repetitive or that I can kind of go on autopilot for, I like to have not just noise in the background, but like having a TV show or a movie that I'm familiar with on in the background makes me feel, it comforts me. It makes me feel like there are other people there. It makes me feel at home in a way. So I tend to like shows that have a lot of character development and a lot of dialogue and a lot of like people that you feel like you know by the time you're done watching it. Because it really does feel like, you know, an extension of my home. And I don't know, I've always found that comforting.
And I feel the same way. You know, my go-to is Frasier. I think I've probably watched. I like it because there's 11 seasons and 20 some episodes, you know, per season, and nothing ever happens. It's fantastic. It's a little bit different where I'm really looking for characters that don't change at all and dialogue that I know by heart. But yeah, it's comforting to kind of have that around in the background. And it, you know, I will admit fully, most of my TV watching is for escapism. And that's not to say that I haven't watched really good TV shows. So like I love Breaking Bad and Downton Abbey, but for those, I usually have to start them like 3 or 4 times before I can really get into them, as opposed to shows that, you know, maybe don't have as much substance. But it's one of the reasons I'm really glad to have Melissa here, because she always digs deeper in and brings out the interesting themes and questions that I wouldn't have thought of, because I'm just looking at the pretty people.
Yeah. I also, yeah, I love having this stuff on in the background. That's kind of, I don't have to think through, but I also really like a good dark TV show. Like I loved Mr. Robot. Things that make you think, like, Lost. Fish and I, you and we've recently been watching Succession, which has been a little hit or miss for us because in the last season, when we went to talk about it, I was watching it week to week and you were watching it on a binge, and you definitely had the right idea. I had binged the first 2 seasons and then I went week to week for season 3, and I was like, oh, this is a long time to wait. So when we were thinking about maybe doing a podcast, one of the requirements was like, the show has to be done. Like, yes, we're going to go week to week, but at least we won't have years and years between, when we start and when we end, and, like lots of breaks when they're filming for the next season. So I think I can binge a TV show like a champion. I've got a trophy for it. And I like to be able to do that.
It is much, I think it's better that way. I mean, there are certain shows you can't, I can't binge watch, like Homeland, that tends to hit a little closer to home for some of the experiences I've been through. But, generally, yes, I agree. I had the option to watch the 3rd season of Succession week to week, and I just said, no, I'm just going to wait and watch something else until it's done.
Yeah, that seems fair enough. Now, one of the things that came up when we were talking about it is, I tend to go a little more optimistic with some of my points of view. You tend to be a little bit more of the realist or the cynic, although it's not always perfectly broken down into that. I think a lot of times we go there. So we went with Felicity, Optimist versus Cynic for this podcast, and I suspect that'll be pretty close to what actually ends up happening.
Yes, I would say Melissa's very much more the optimist, and Cynic is just sort of my default setting. So I do find a little fault with the whole glass half empty, glass half full analogy. Because for me, well, here's the thing. I don't think, there's, a glass half empty. I think, I'm surprised that there's any water at all. And also, why only half a glass? And where did the rest go? And what's wrong with what's left?
Wow.
Right. And you may think, okay, is this really cynicism or paranoia? But I would ask, Melissa, if you had a friend over, you were offering them a glass of water, would you ever give them half a glass?
They'd be like, what's up with the half glass?
I would. I mean, if it's a real friend, if they are a friendly person and a good host and this is an interaction, you're getting a full glass of water.
Yeah, they'd be like, what, you don't love me enough to give me a whole glass? And frankly, Fish, I do love you that much. I would give you a whole glass.
Of course you would, because only people who are nefarious are going to give you half, or there's something wrong with the water.
Wow.
Someone drank the first half and we're like, nah.
Or maybe the water was so good that they were like, I'm going to test this out first. Oh, it's really good. I'm going to drink a little more. And then they realized, oops, I drank half of it.
And I guess that's why you're the opposite.
Yes. Okay. I see what you did there. So, okay. So, I mean, you would think to yourself, glass half full, glass half empty. And then, we've just gone off those rails.
Well, because I don't think a cynic is someone who thinks the glass is half empty. A cynic is someone who sits there and goes,
why didn't you give me the other half glass?
Well, yeah, and what is wrong with the water? Why wouldn't someone have finished it? Or is someone just being super rude and leaving half a glass of water out, in which case I'm not drinking it?
Which they could be. Yeah. I mean, yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. It really does. I see that there's a flaw in the model. and I think we have to accept it as a people, and a
Yeah.
fish.
And you heard it first here. I mean, I'm very sensitive to amounts of water available being a fish.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a sensitive issue for me.
Yeah. I mean, you need the supply is what you need.
Exactly.
Well, okay. I think this is interesting. So I'm very curious to know, because we talked about different potential shows that we could watch together. And there were a number of them on the list. And we landed on Felicity. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who love the show. It is a show that kind of is of a certain time when you look at it from what the world was like in a technology standpoint. But I do feel like the relationships of the show hold up really. Like if you're in it for the relationships, you're still going to find satisfaction in it if you started watching it as a fan later on. So I'm really curious. I am going to be curious, for listeners to share with us who they are and what their experience with Felicity has been. But let's start with ours. Like what brought you to Felicity? When or how did you watch it? Why do you want to watch it now? Like what do you think you'll get from a rewatch? So what's been your Felicity experience, Fish?
Well, I did see Felicity, as it came out, and I watched it week to week. And I think the first time I probably, I don't know, I may not have gotten past the second season, but then I think you're going to have to remind me. I feel like we watched part of it, or at least we talked about it.
Yeah, and I was trying to think if we watched the whole thing or part of it when we were in college.
I think it was part of it together. Maybe the part I hadn't seen before. Mm-hmm. But I have not rewatched it since then, and I have a terrible memory. So there will be little bits and things that I remember. Like don't get me started on the technology. There were phones. She did not have to record a tape. That was not a dictaphone was not an appropriate 90s technology for communication. Fine. Just going to leave it at that.
It seems fair.
We'll come back to it.
I think the creators realized that as well partway through. I think you're in very good company there with the showrunners. Yeah. I also, let's see, because we were not far off of the age that Felicity, the character, was supposed to be. So I think it started, let's see, this show aired 1998 to 2002. And so it started while I was still in high school. And for me, I'm sure when I was in high school, I wouldn't have been able to predictably, consistently watch the episodes because I did gymnastics and I always had evening practices. So if I liked a show that came on in the evenings, maybe I'd get to see part of it, maybe I wouldn't. So it was unreliable for me to watch it that way. But I remember seeing Carrie Russell, and I had hair very similar to hers, or I still have hair that was very similar to what it was when she started Felicity. And I hadn't really seen a character that was close to my age that had hair like that. And, she was so awkward and socially uncomfortable and really sheltered, she had this really sheltered upbringing, and she was just trying to find her way in relationships in the world. And I related to a lot of it. So I knew I loved the show. I just couldn't watch it consistently. And then at some point I got the DVD set in college, and I watched it all the way through, and I watched it with you. And I don't know how many times I've rewatched the show. It's been quite a few times because, like I said, that it's one of those comfortable things to have on in the background. But I will say it's been a few years at least since I did my last rewatch, and I've had a lot of stuff happen in my life in that last few years since I watched it. So I suspect I'm going to come to it with pretty different eyes this time, even though I know it well. Just because I've got I'm in a different place. I have different boundaries that I've set in my life, and I've made some different choices. So I kind of wish that we had recorded ourselves when we watched it in college. I wonder what we talked about.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I my memory is not good. I do. You definitely will be the expert on this. Um, it'll, look, I'm not gonna lie. I watched it because Nola's cute.
Ooh.
That's why. That's
So for
why
all
I
you
watched
Ben
it.
versus Noel people, we've got Fish claiming a side here.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm also the cynic, so feel free to read into that what you want.
Wow.
Um, but and I have seen, Ben in all of the underworld things, and nope, no.
Okay. Wow. Well, here we go. We've alienated half the audience. Okay. Welcome to Felicity, Optimist versus Cynic.
Look,
Oh,
Melissa might be a Ben person.
Yeah, maybe I am. I don't know. I have to look. I like that she had both elements in her life, and
She's a horrible person. She just won't say it.
No, I don't know. I like the relationship with Ben. So maybe we've got a Ben and a Noel here. But I do think she kind of needed both of those guys to be the person that she was meant to be. Like I think that we are a sum of the influences in our life in some ways. Like the people that you put around you has a lot to do with how you develop. And you can make a choice to lean into it or lean away from it and set boundaries, but I do think that having the exposure to certain people is part of like how the decision tree gets formed in your life. So it's hard for me to imagine, like, even if I think about the progression of Felicity in the show, it's hard for me to imagine like her not having either one of those men in her world. So I guess I think the Ben versus Noel question is a good one, but I almost want to make it a Ben and Noel, like, because she kind of has a little bit of what they both brought out in her. But
yeah, I don't remember. I kind of have this vague memory of maybe thinking like Ben and her might have been okay. I'll have, as we rewatch it, I'll remember. This is not to say that I thought that Felicity and Noel should be together. I felt that Fish and Noel should be together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The problem there, interspecies, it's a challenge to get that across the line.
He'd make it work.
Okay.
I believe.
I see what you're saying. saying. So what are you looking forward to in this rewatch? Like, we're doing it now. We're going in. We're doing a podcast. We're going to talk about this week to week. We're going to meet people that love Felicity. So what, why do we pick this show?
I mean, I'm really interested to go back through it with you because it's exactly like all the things you just brought up. I just wouldn't do that. Pretty people, yay. Okay, now less pretty people. Now the pretty people are back. That would be my recap. So, Melissa.
It's an interesting take.
Yeah.
It's a hot take from you.
Yeah, there you go.
That's one way to summarize it.
Yeah, but Melissa brings up, you just bring up all of these themes and like how it relates to our lives. And it's just not something that I've thought about in a very long time. So I feel like it's going to be a journey and I'm excited to go on it.
Yeah, me too. I also, I think it's nice to be able to recap it now that we're some years later from our first watch and we've lived a lot of life and we've been adult women in the world we've had some experiences that have some common themes that we've talked about, amongst ourselves, but we've also, I'm sure this will bring up a lot of stuff that we've never told each other about. And, to have the chance to explore what your experiences in life have been by watching a show. And I think even though this show is dated in terms of the technology, in terms of, some of the scenes wouldn't be able to happen today, even some of the pivotal ones, but like it still holds up from a dialogue standpoint and a relationship standpoint. And I think there are a lot of experiences that you can look at and still talk about years later. Not every show would hold up in that way. So I am interested to see what we think about it as, women who've lived some life now. And I can't even imagine what we used to talk about when we talked about it, because we just hadn't been through it yet. But
she could have written a letter. Letters were still a thing. There was postage.
I mean, there were options. There were definitely options. I think this brings us to our format. If you're wondering, how are we going to talk about this in podcasts? There are some ideas that we have. Look, and we'll be honest, like, we haven't done a podcast before. We're going to talk to you about Felicity. That's what we're going to do. And we hope that you're going to enjoy it. And we have some thoughts about how the structure of that will look. And we're hoping that's pretty true to what we'll deliver for you over time. But I know, like, week to week, when we start talking about the shows, we'll plan to share some general notes from the show, things that happened and what we think about them. But, as we are your optimist and cynic, I will share with you some things perhaps that will make you smile in Notes from an Optimist. And Fish is going to tell us like it is. She'll give us some rants from a cynic along the way. But we also had an idea for another segment, which is, why I'm thinking about this, of what Sally said and what Sally was really thinking. Because in the first season or two, there was this device of Felicity talking to a mentor, a friend from home, and she was always speaking into a dictaphone, and she'd get tapes back from Sally. And so, the segment we're thinking of is, here's what Sally actually said, but Fish wants to tell us what Sally really meant to say between the lines. And it sounds like from the very beginning, you want to poke a hole in the whole system.
Yeah. Well, no, clearly Felicity had her way of doing things, and Sally went along with it. And, during my professional life, I've been a mentor, and I've, done things by email and the telephone. But, you want to be supportive, and you want to be encouraging to someone who is younger and not as experienced. And some people are more charitable than others. But I know what she was really thinking.
Well, and so that segment, we're going to go for it, but it's only going to last a little bit of time, because the show creators also realized the problem that you realized, which is people have other ways to communicate. So we'll only be able to do that for as long as that segment actually happens on the show, but we're kind of excited about that one. Also, we want to answer your questions or take your feedback. So we encourage you to send your feedback, and we already have a way for you to do that. We have an email address, themelissafish@gmail.com. That is Melissa with 1 L, 2 S's, themelissafish@gmail.com. So reach out to us there. Send your thoughts about Felicity, what your Felicity experience has been. What are you looking forward to in the rewatch, maybe? If you're an artist, send us your Felicity art. We have an Instagram account. We'd love to share it. Let us hear from you. We don't want this to be just about us. We want this to be a community of people who listen to Felicity and watch the show and listen to the podcast. So yeah, get us your feedback, and then we'll have a segment on the show. If you feel comfortable, we'll share some of it. And then also we'll rate the episode, and we may very well rate some other highlights or lowlights as well. So we'll share with you some of the things that we thought really stood out. Yeah, those are the main things. But I also wanted to say, and this is important, this is, a little piece of housekeeping that we have to take care of here. And maybe we should have done it earlier, but it's worth saying, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. Chances are, somewhere along the way, we're going to tell you about something that hasn't happened yet in the rewatch, and consider yourself warned, right? Like, Fish may not feel like she remembers it very well, but chances are we are going to spoil some things for you. So, Fish, should people be listening to this if they want a spoiler-free podcast?
No.
You heard it there. No. Don't listen to this podcast if you want a spoiler-free podcast. Maybe consider just watching the show and then come back and listen to the podcast. That's an option. Or accept that you're going to hear some spoilers.
Yeah, I will at times randomly come out with information that I somehow tucked away somewhere in my brain. And maybe I think it's from another show. And then Melissa will say, actually, that's from next season.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
it can
that
happen.
happened.
It could very well
Yeah.
happen. Now, I will say, if this is your first time watching Felicity, and look, I think this show still holds up even if you had a spoiler, because, you know, it's not like an action driven plot that everything drastically changes. There are a couple of times where you probably would hate life if you found out something that was meant to be a cliffhanger, but there isn't a lot of that in Felicity. So, you know, I would say consider watching beforehand if you're wanting to watch it week to week with us. I don't think it'll ruin your experience of the show if you hear a spoiler along the way, but, you know, just buyer beware. You know, the podcast is still available to you. You get to decide. Just know that we'll share some things that maybe come up in the future.
Also, the podcast is free.
Also, the podcast is free. So when I said buyer beware, you know, it's free, guys. That's it. Oh my goodness. So that's a little bit about us. We're, you know, Fish, what else, anything else you want to say here?
Nope.
Yeah, I think we've covered it. So, but we would love to hear from you. I mean, this is all a getting to know you podcast for us, this first intro and welcome. So we'd love to hear from you and know, you know, what you're looking forward to, what your experience with Felicity has been. Share that with us, because we would like to start getting to know the Felicity community. We know it's strong, we know it's out there, and we want to be part of it. And we're excited to bring some new takes to it as much as we can in our rewatch. And we're really looking forward to it. But yeah, next time we're gonna get going. We're gonna watch these week to week, and we're gonna start with the pilot, which makes a lot of sense, right? We're starting in chronological order. We're starting from the very beginning, and we're gonna go for it. So we're gonna start with the pilot episode, which aired in 1998. So this is a great time to go out and find wherever you know, if you still have the DVDs or if you want to watch it on, you know, any platform, this is a good time to find where you want to watch it. And then join us again next week to talk about the pilot episode. So yeah, that's it for today, Fish. Until next time, don't hook up with Ben while I'm gone.
I'm a fish.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.